All right. Good morning to you, Mr. Swirsky. How we doing today?
I'm doing well, Andy. Thank you.
Happy to have you on. Grateful for this opportunity. With that being said, let's get talking. I guess let's talk hoops. Let's talk sports media. Hell yeah. So I guess we'll start at the beginning with you. You've always mentioned that sports, getting into play calling, wanting to broadcast games has always been like a dream of yours ever since you were little Chuck Swirsky watching games with your family, your friends, whatever it was. As you grew up and like continue to pursue that, did you always have an idea of exactly what role you kind of wanted to fill? Like, was it always going to be, I wanted to broadcast in the NBA. I wanted to, call some post pregame shows and do the halftime stuff. What did that look like as you continued on through that journey?
Well, Andy, from number one, from the get-go, I wanted to be an NBA broadcaster. This is before the NBA was the NBA. I'm dating myself because I'm talking about black and white TV, no color TV. And the league had like 10 teams, and that was it, maybe even fewer, because the ABC game of the week was always featuring Boston or Philadelphia. Funny how those things don't change over a period of decades, but it was Boston, Philadelphia, sometimes Cincinnati with the great Oscar Robertson, Detroit a little bit, Lakers, because they were on the West Coast, they didn't get a lot of pub. But, at the end of the day, I love the NBA. And from a little boy, and then if you take me to the high school era, where the Knicks got really good, and the old Baltimore Bullets, now the Washington Wizards. And Baltimore and New York had some fierce playoff games. I mean, Andy, it was intense. It was probably at the same level of Bulls Pistons, late 80s, early 90s.
Oh yeah.
I love the league. My father died when I was in elementary school, and across the street was a friend of mine who was a grade behind me in school. His dad was the high school basketball coach. So we went to all these games: high school, college, University of Washington, Seattle U. Seattle Supersonics became an expansion team. So it was like, to me, I had died and gone to heaven. It was awesome because I love basketball. Now, having said that, I got into other sports, did play by play of other sports, and I love that as well. But the passion I have for basketball is unparalleled.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, and I think that really comes out in the way you call the games. It's the raw enthusiasm. It's like you call the games the same way now as you would have, however many years ago when it was high school or college Chuck Swirsky calling these
Correct.
games, and I think that really shined through on your broadcasts.
Yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I'm accountable for the game I see in front of me because integrity is everything to me. You have to report what you see. It never becomes personal, but I still have the same enthusiasm I did 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, because I'm 69, as I did when, from a little boy to this period of time, because I love what I do. I love the sport. I love what goes into the sport and why the sport was created by James Naismith, with the amount of players on a team on the floor and the height of the basket. And then came the shot clock and all these things that have just helped the sport. I have, I'm still trying to work through where the 3 point shot is because I think we've taken it from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. And while I love the three ball, I think it's really changed the game. And there are days, Andy, where I think when I see these games on TV that we've kind of gone over the top with this because I love the creativity and the athleticism of a player being able to beat a player off the dribble with his ball handling skills. I love inside 3 point arc passing, the dribble weave handoff where a player comes from the elbow with a handoff to clear on a side screen for a three really doesn't do much for me. But I get it. It's a new era. This is the way the game is being coached everywhere, from high school, AAU, college, to now the pros. And you have to adjust and adapt, not only as a broadcaster and as somebody who loves the game, you got to have to adjust as a fan too. So when you're on a 3-on-1 fast break and you see the guy, Andy, driving right to the rim, and you think he's going in for a layup, and then all of a sudden he passes the ball to the corner, and you say to yourself, okay, like when a guy hits the three, all right, I get it. When a guy misses the three, you say to yourself, I'd like to have those 2 points back.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point you bring up, and how much the game has changed through all your years of broadcasting. Have you ever felt that, whether it's like an actual rule change or just how the game is played? You talk about there's a lot more threes being taken now than when Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan were playing. Do you feel like the way you broadcast, the way you call games has had to change dramatically for that? Have you had trouble adjusting to that at all?
Well, I wouldn't say trouble adjusting. I would say that as a basketball purist, I had to work through the beauty and the artistry of a dribble drive and then the kick out. And when Houston had Harden, for example, and I would see all this, I would see, Capella setting a screen, and I would see all these, players for Houston operating, and then all of a sudden they're just boom, ball comes out and a three. Now, if you shoot 38% threes, 40% threes, okay, I can kind of live with that. But when the wrong guys are taking threes, then I have an issue.
Yeah.
But again, this is just as far as a broadcaster. If it's certain style of play, back when I was in my 20s and 30s, it was Powerball, where you would throw the ball in the middle. Every team had a low post center, back to the rim. He took that pirouette step, or he would do the curl and a baby hook. In the case of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the sky hook that was unstoppable to block because the artistry of having the release point so high on the hook.
Way up there.
No one does that anymore except on the little baby hooks inside the semicircle. So, now if you get a kid, let's say you're 14, 15 years old, and your growth spurt has taken you to 6'9", 6'10", and it appears with your growth plate that you could end up being 7'1", 7'2", whatever. Well, these coaches now are bringing you in, and they're sitting down with you and said, hey, you know what? We're going to work on your shooting. We want you away from the hoop. It's going to protect your career. You're not going to get banged up by these 6'10" power forwards that have 40, 50 pounds on you. We're going to bring you out. And all of a sudden, here you are, you're a 6'10", 6'11" kid, and you're 18, 19 years old, and you're going through 1, maybe 2 years of college, and you're playing the wing because all these 7-footers who are now taking shots, courtesy of Dirk, and it's a copycat league, and it has a ripple effect. And so a lot of bigs are not taught the basic true fundamentals of low post basketball. And what we're seeing now in the NFL with running backs, where running back was once a featured position next to the quarterback, it was the featured position on a football team, along with maybe a defensive end. But now look what's happened in the NFL with running backs. These guys, they're not getting paid. They come in, they play for a few years, out the door. Where in my generation, if you had a good running back and you got 10 years out of him, sign him up. Now, okay, it's flavor of the month. Hey, I'm going to use this guy for 2, 3, 4 years. Next man up. We're going to throw him little short flip passes, 2-3 yards, let them run up the in the gap. It's no longer I formation, hand off the football, boom. Quarterbacks want to throw the football. The game's entertaining. Coaches are told by their GMs during the hiring process, we're looking for explosive football. We want entertaining football. Well, if a coach in the interview says, well, I still believe in a fullback, and that guy has no chance to get
See
employed.
ya.
So that's where we're all going right now with the three.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, you're obviously a broadcaster. I think you have to always factor in that entertainment factor because, you know, after all, that's whatever sports league you might be calling for. That's definitely going to be a huge part of it for, you know, the fans is kind of what makes the league keep going and such. So that's a great perspective. Next up, I do kind of want to dive into your broadcasting history. You've been a lot of places, a lot of different times. The one spot I want to take it way back. We're in DePaul, 1980. It's your first game. You're calling John Stockton's Zags versus Mark Aguirre's DePaul Blue Demons. I mean, I want to talk about your DePaul experience as a whole, but my first question is, a young Charles Swirsky in that arena, what is that like? That has to be just the most amazing thing you've ever seen as someone that's that age.
Well, I had never seen the then Rosemont Horizon until I called the game. I had
Oh,
never
wow.
set 1 foot inside the arena. And it was amazing because number one, we had a brand new facility in Chicago. I mean, Chicago Stadium was really, really old. Okay. United Center was 14 years away from opening the doors. I mean, we had no ballpark that was brand new. Comiskey Park was still on the south side. There was no new ballpark. Wrigley Field was falling apart before the Ricketts and the Tribune Company did a little bit, but the Ricketts have really poured in money to Wrigley Field, and Soldier Field was Soldier Field. So, I mean, all of a sudden you had the Rosemont Horizon, and you get a very exciting DePaul team in the middle of what I call the golden window and era of Blue Demons basketball. And it started with Dave Corzine, and then, of course, Mark Aguirre, Terry Cummings, and then we had the Rod Strickland, Stanley Brundy era, Kevin Edwards. That was unbelievable. Yeah. Tom Kleinschmidt came down to Michigan State or DePaul. He takes DePaul. And of course, we know the rest of the story with DePaul basketball. But during, I would say, probably a 10-year run, 10, 12-year run from late 70s to early 90s, DePaul owned this town. And then Jordan, of course, came in 84 and changed the dynamics of the optics of people watching sports. And the Bears got hot. They had a window from probably at about 84 to about 90, early 90s, where they had a really nice run, only one Super Bowl appearance with that dominating team. But DePaul was unbelievable.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it was like. I mean, it's probably what you would consider the golden age of DePaul basketball, and you were there for pretty much the most of it with legendary head coach Ray Meyer. Yeah, you were there for, I believe, 10 or 12 years.
Yeah, 14 years.
Yeah, check that out. Yeah,
and I'll tell you what, Terry Cummings, fabulous player. Mark Aguirre, was Mark Aguirre.
Number one pick, Mark Aguirre. Yeah.
Number one pick, Mark Aguirre in 1981. Rod Strickland, unbelievable player. I mean, from the moment he stepped on the floor, I could tell this guy was headed to the NBA.
Yeah, that's a very special thing to have as a broadcaster when you can kind of see all the times when you've called college games too, whether it was DePaul or University of Michigan, both football and basketball. That's kind of going on through your career too. I guess, since you eventually made the transition to the pros when it comes to the Raptors and the Bulls, what did you learn most or take away most from your time calling both DePaul and both Michigan football and basketball games? You know, what do you see as what do you look back on and kind of take away from that?
Well, the thing that I took away from Michigan is how big the program is. not only business wise, but on the field and with the alums across the country. It's amazing. I mean, I can honestly tell you this: the 4 years I spent at Michigan calling Michigan games, as I reflect on my career, four of the best years professionally I have ever experienced, because the intensity of these games in the big house or in the Big Ten, and then basketball, where I came in the tail end of the Fab Five, and then the next class with Robert Traylor, Maurice Taylor, Maceo Baston, a really good group, and actually had the rollover not happen, which opened up an investigation. I think, in my own opinion, Mateen Cleaves would have gone to Michigan. Um, Now, how he arrived at Michigan is another story, but I think he would have attended Michigan. But and that would have been interesting, because had Mateen Cleaves not gone to Michigan State, they don't win those NCAA, that title, no chance.
No.
So, but Michigan was awesome. They had a huge budget. DePaul's budget, not so big. And they made the most of it. Total respect for Ray and Joey Meyer. Love both. Joey did a fantastic job. Ray, of course, is Ray Meyer. I mean, but that was something that I will never, ever lose sight of, the fact that the entertainment value and the broadcasting value was second to none.
I've always felt that there's a certain sort of passion with college sports, and especially like alums of a program, that runs just deeper, just a little, at least a little bit deeper than some pro sports too. Like, especially when it comes to how I know Michigan, or how I understand Michigan Wolverine fans, they're almost willing to die for that program and willing to
Yeah,
see them succeed and stuff like that. Would
sure.
you agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the landscape now is changing with, the Big Ten, really. Honestly, I mean, I don't know if they're going to keep the name of the Big Ten Conference, because how many teams are there now in the Big? I mean,
18,
so like
something like that.
that would be like if you were to bring on 3 or 4 more people in your family, and someone asks you, how many people do you have in your family? 4. Well, not really. You have like 8. So, I don't. They'll probably keep the moniker because it's been with us since day one. But I mean, I grew up on the West Coast when the Pac-12 was the Pac-8, and then they expanded with Arizona, Arizona State, and we know that Utah came in, Colorado came in, but I think that you know what's going on in college athletics now. What I do think they should do, I think they should have football like superpowers. I get it, but have football money, and there is a lot of football money, go in to the conference, respective conferences, and let non-revenue sports stay in conference play so that they can maintain the rivalries. We really don't need to see, you know, some of the non-revenue sports, men and women, getting on an airplane, going from Seattle or Eugene or LA to, New Jersey for a game against Rutgers. I mean, really, I mean, it takes a lot of time, and these young people are flying all over the country like they're pros. And I mean, I don't think anyone's going to get really excited over a USC Rutgers football game. Seriously, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, or, hey, Nebraska is going to play, Oregon. Well, now, if you said that 20, 30 years ago when Nebraska was really good, you could say,
Oh, hell yeah.
wow, but Oregon wasn't very good 20 or 30 years ago, and they flipped. But I don't know where college athletics is going. I think, but there's so much money out there.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity. I'm not sure where it's going to go myself. And if you don't know, then I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Huh? Yeah. All right. I guess the next thing I got is, you mentioned before your dream was to always call NBA games. So you are calling games. You're in Detroit. You're calling games for Michigan football, basketball, Detroit Red Wings, and then the Toronto Raptors come calling for you to be their play-by-play announcer. I guess what's the feeling you get when you kind of get a call like that, and what were you most excited about that opportunity? Like, the day's finally here. I'm getting the call.
Well, um, I had been close on a couple of jobs, didn't get them, very dejected, disappointed, and I had to get better. And at the end of the day, Andy, you know, I don't point fingers. The only finger I point at is myself. I had to get better. And so I listened tape after tape after tape. And I said, I got to get better in this area. I need to develop um, a vocabulary and get away from standard terminology. I need to mention the score more. I need to sharpen my quickness on a call, not to be impatient, but to stay on top of the play. Um, I need to do a better job bringing in an analyst and asking questions. And not only that, but when I should ask it, and and where we do things succinctly because it's radio, it's not TV, where you can talk over a couple of plays and let the analyst finish his train of thought. Um, so all these things came into play. So when the Raptors job became available, and I was encouraged to apply for it, and I had a great meeting with just about everyone connected with the organization, and it was fabulous. And that's how it came to be.
Yeah, I mean, quite the run in Toronto as well. You got to call some greats. I mean, Vince Carter, Air Canada Carter, I believe, as you dubbed him.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, Tracy McGrady, a bunch of
Yep.
great teams there. I guess, what do you reflect on most fondly from your time in Toronto? Because you're a beloved figure there. They had passed out bobbleheads of you. It was so much love between you, the fans, the organization there. What do you remember most?
Well, I remember number one, the fan base is awesome. I love Toronto. The fan base is outstanding. So that's the first thing, and how warm and welcome they were to me and my family. Um, when I reflect back on those years, do I regret that McGrady left and bolted for Orlando and didn't stay with Vince? Yes. Do I understand the reasoning? Yeah, I do. Do I wish it had never happened? Yes. I wanted those two to, as they grow and develop at the same level. I really wanted to see how they would do. And not only those two, but I think other players would have come to Toronto to be a part of what they were creating. And we never saw it. So that's the only on the court, other than, they came close to beating Philly in 2001, didn't happen. But other than on the court, disappointment, off the court was great. The ownership, fantastic. Management, great. They were always first class, always. And so I can't say one negative thing, not one, about the country or the organization at the time, or just the people and the fan base. It was fantastic. So when we start talking about Toronto, it always brings a place in my heart for the country and for the people.
You are a Canadian citizen now, if I remember
Very
that correct.
proud of that.
And
I am.
I think that's unbelievable.
I became a dual citizen. I'm still a citizen of the United States, and I'm very proud to be an American citizen as well. My father was a decorated United States naval officer, and he loved this country, and I love this country. So I do think you can love two countries, and you can respect both countries. They have differences, but at the end of the day, as a citizen of both countries, I always look for the best in people, and that's what I try to do.
I think that's a great take on it right there. Yeah, dual citizen Chuck Swirsky at your service. Going back to Toronto real quick, you talk about all the relationships you had with the fans, the organization and stuff. Going back to Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady, were you close with a lot of the players on those teams? Did
Uh-huh.
you build any relationships there? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Talk about that a little bit if you could.
Well, I mean, I had a relationship with Vince. We kind of had a falling out when he got traded because he wanted out. He was frustrated with management. I get that. But the whole organization was really linked to Vince. And I think there were a lot of employees who were very anxious, concerned, questioned whether or not they were even going to be employed in Canada, fearing that with Vince being traded, the franchise was going to bolt and it was going to relocate. That's how much of an impact he had as a player. But it didn't happen, obviously, and they've gone on to bigger and better things. They won the championship in 2019. So that really answers the question there. But McGrady and Carter, to me, two early 20 somethings. In the case of Tracy, he became a Raptor at the age of 18 and he left at 20 as a free agent. I mean, so he had a great career. Vince had a great career. Bosch had a great career, and I love Chris. So that's what I take out of that period of time. Some really good basketball. The game, of course, that I recall was Kobe's 81. And that to me is the single most reflective game I've ever witnessed in my life.
Yeah, that was one thing I definitely wanted to at least touch on was you bore witness to the Raptors trying desperately to stop Kobe Bryant from doing that. You had a great relationship with the late Kobe Bryant as well, as you do with several other NBA players that you never even called for. Stephen Curry being an example of them.
Yeah.
How do those kind of come about? Is it just you kind of start that conversation with them before a game, and then it just kind of becomes a thing?
Well, in the case of Kobe, his agent, now the GM of the Lakers, Rob Pelinka. Rob played high school ball here in the Chicagoland area at Lake Forest, went to Michigan, got to know him, got to know his parents. Wonderful family, great family. He ends up being my broadcast partner at the University of Michigan doing radio games while he was attending law school. Goes to work for Arn Tellem in LA as an intern, then full time, leaves Arn Tellem, and Kobe Bryant says, I want you to represent me. And Rob introduced me to Kobe. And so every time the Raptors played the Lakers, I would put my head in the locker room, sit down with them for 5 minutes tops, and actually, and this is true, probably 95% of the time, we never talked basketball. And the last time I saw Kobe was his last game here. It was at his press conference, and he saw me. We walked down the hallway, just talking. Asked me about the family. Said he was going to be really busy post basketball. Was looking forward to spending time with his girls. And when he perished in this crash with his daughter, and let's not forget, 7 other human beings lost their
Right.
lives. But I can't help but not believe that what was in store for all of us, the greatness of Kobe Bryant, other than basketball. Do I think he would have stayed involved in the game? Yes. But I think his greatest joy was his family and what was going on with Gianna, but his other girls in his family. I mean, his daughter is going to be either a freshman. I think she might be a freshman, or maybe entering her sophomore year at
I
USC.
think so. Yeah.
And so all these things, I mean, he won an Oscar for the short story narrative, a short film, and he was involved in this. I mean, it wasn't like Kobe just signed off on it and said, you do the work, I'll look at it and say, okay. I mean, he was very much involved in this project, just like I think he would have been involved with a lot of different projects. So we never saw what could have been. And I think I feel so badly, first and foremost, for his wife and children on the loss of their husband and father. But I also feel sorry for us because I think he had so much to offer and to give.
Yeah, yeah. You really can't understate how much of a legend he was both on the court, but maybe even more of a legend off the court, and just what he did for the community, his family, just I guess us as fans, always wanted to be there to show his face, just spread what he could. A guy knew a lot and was trying to spread that message, and I think that's a great thing.
Yep.
Obviously, may he rest in peace.
Yep.
Much love to the Bryant family. Yeah, yeah. Moving on from that, real quick. You spoke about Rob Pelinka, how you used to call games with him at the University of Michigan, actually. Going along, you've had a great list of people right beside you when you're calling games. You're currently still working with Bill Wennington, as you have for quite a while with Chicago. You had the one and only Jack Armstrong in
Yep.
Toronto for a little bit. Yeah. I think you've always had great chemistry with pretty much every person you've ever called a game with. Is there some sort of like secret sauce there? Like what it makes you and Bill, or what made you and Jack kind of go off each other so well, be able to call games so efficiently, and just have a good time in general?
Well, number one, that's a very good question, Andy. The way I look at it, working with a partner is that they're family, and you treat family with respect. You treat everyone with respect. At least I hope to do that every day, whether it's with somebody who's getting me hot tea or the person, who's picking up dry cleaning for me, whatever. I mean, you have to do that. I mean, we're human beings and you want to treat people with respect. But I think it goes beyond the fact that some of it's just natural organic chemistry where you get two people and you kind of play off each other. But I always want the person sitting next to me to shine. This isn't about me. This is about the game. And while I get passionate about the game and get excited and all this stuff, it's about the game. But I would be doing a disservice to the person sitting next to me if I just had them sit there and not contribute. And it's my responsibility as a broadcaster to exercise the skill of me taking what they have to offer and then allowing the listener to absorb it. And the only way that can happen is you listen and you ask questions, and you do it in a manner of respect. So when the Bulls are playing, I want people to know that Bill was a rotation player for the Bulls. I want people to know he knows what he's talking about. I want to lift him up. And I think when the analyst knows that the play-by-play person has got his back and he's not throwing him out the window, then I think there is a comfort level that the base of the foundation of a relationship can build.
Yeah, it definitely comes through on the broadcast. I would say, even though you're on the radio, you might not be able to see you guys. You can definitely hear how you and Bill play off each other, and contribute to calling a great game. I think people are entertained whether the Bulls are up 30 or down 30. I think they always tune in just to hear you guys talk about basketball, how the Bulls are doing, and I guess life in general sometimes.
Yep.
And I think that's a great thing where you can kind of broadcast, be yourself, and people will still listen. I know I listen, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah. I mean, why wouldn't I? I'm talking to the Swirsk here. Come on now. So I believe we are almost at time. I do want to be respectful of your time. If I could, I do have one more question for you.
Go ahead, Andy.
Appreciate it. So I'm sure you've gotten this in the past. The catchphrases that you've had, whether it's the salami and cheese, the onions, baby, onions. I've read the stories of how you come up with some of these, but you have quite a few catchphrases. Are these like a spur of the moment type of thing, like from the mind of Chuck Swirsky? Are they kind of drafted up with some stories? Does it just kind of happen? Like, I love it personally.
Well, I mean, like the one that has resonated now with the Bulls is when a guy gets hot, like has a big quarter, and I shout out, put him in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it's exaggeration. I get it. It's over the top. I'm embellishing, but it's to really signify that this guy is in such a zone that we need to put him somewhere of greatness. So, you know, just like the salami and cheese came from a letter I received from someone who said, you know, I'm watching TV. I was doing TV with the Raptors. You know, I can't leave. I'm in every play, but I'm starving. So when you know the Raptors have won the game, can you say, you know, something like, hey, this ball game, you know, you can, you know, go and grab something in the refrigerator. And he goes, by the way, I like salami and cheese. So the next game, you know, Raptors are up by 8 with about 20 seconds to go. And thank goodness they won. And I get out the salami and cheese, mama. This ball game is over. Well, like, you know, the producer in my headset saying, Chuck, are you all right? I said, and I hit the mute button talking back where the audience couldn't hear us, but the director in the truck could. And I said, I've got this. It's good. No worries. So I explained what happened. And then all of a sudden, you know, we've got, you know, like people are bringing signs to the games. We've got a pizza company sponsoring salami and cheese pizza. We've got T-shirts, and it was like, oh my gosh, it was crazy.
I love it. I think it's great. Yeah, it's one of the most memorable phrases of all time.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like my Zoom's going to cut out me
All
in here
right.
in a second, so I'll keep this
Andy, be
brief.
well. Thank you. This was
Yeah,
fun.
yes, great talking to you. Hope we could stay in touch. I'll be seeing you at the games this year. Thank you so
I
much,
hope
Mr.
so, Andy.
Swirsky.
Thank you.
Bye bye.